Robin Vincent and welcome to Multimedia Technology and Surface Pro Audio. Today we are looking at the Surface Pro 7. This is the beginning of my examination of it because, as we all know, laptops like this, surfaces like this just pop up and just work perfectly the first time without anybody having to bother about it. No, we know that's not the case. It's an interesting form factor. It's a fascinating hybrid laptop. It has some great performance abilities with the touchscreen and the pen. It's light, it's sexy, it's cool, it's gorgeous, and we really like to run music software on it. And we can, provided that we do a little bit of work and tweaking first. And so what I'd like to do in this video is show you the current state of play and then see how much of it we can fix, just as we go. And hopefully in doing so, I'll be able to demonstrate some of the tripwires you might run into, some of the issues you might have and how to get around them and how to solve them. Because I am fairly confident that this is going to work fine, ultimately. But what we have right now, and what I will demonstrate to you first, is how it is out of the box. I've done no tweaking, I've not changed any power plans, it's on a balanced plan. I've stopped it turning the screen off, that's about as far as it goes. But this is how it is out of the box, fully updated with all the Windows updates. Everything's on, nothing's tweaked to make it fantastic or anything like that. It's just ready to go as it is. I have it connected to a couple of things. I've got it connected to a Complete Audio 6 over here. This is a USB audio interface from Native Instruments. It's worked perfectly well on the Surface Pro 6 and the Surface Pro 2017 and the Surface Pro 4 because I tested it out on all of those platforms a few months ago. I've also got this Native Instruments Complete M32 MIDI keyboard attached. Both of them are attached via USB, which is going into a USB hub here, which has also got two dongles on it, which I need for running various bits of software. And all of these are going into the single USB port at the side. And it's the regular USB port. It does now have a USB-C port, and we may well have a look at that in a bit. But for the moment, I'm trying to start with a basic setup. The other thing I've got wired up is the headphone output here, so that we can switch between the USB audio and the onboard audio to see if there's any difference in performance, any difference in the way that that works, so that we'll be able to draw some comparisons. Now, everyone has different expectations of what they're going to use their Surface for. For some people, it has to be as mobile as an iPad. You have to be able to take it on a bus and make music with it. For other people, they want to use it in the studio, connect it to bigger screens and a larger system. My experience with the Surface platform so far has been that it is completely capable of being taken out and about all over the place and being made music with. But the way to get the best performance out of it, I've found, is to keep it plugged into power. So that's what we're going to do for this. Now, before I go any further, I must answer the one question that everybody asks, which is, how many plugins will it run? Will it run my projects? I can't answer that question. Stop asking me that question. I can't answer that question because all plugins are different. You might be able to run 100 plugins of one particular plugin and no plugins at all of another type of plugin. So the question itself has no possibility of being answered. So what I will hope to do during this video and the videos that come after it is give you an idea of what it can do, give you a sense of its performance so that you can go, oh right, so it ran 3 of those, 5 of those and 6 of those, therefore that's going to be similar to what I'm doing. Or not, I just want to give you an idea, a flavour. And there's absolutely no guarantees that some old plugin you want to run, which just sucks the CPU out of the very ground, is going to work for you. Who knows? But another piece of software might just fly completely. It just depends on what it is that it's doing and what you're doing and what your expectations are of this. Because, I'm sorry, I've probably said this before, but I will have to keep going over it. The sort of processor within this system does not lend itself to real-time music production. Because with music production, it's a fairly unique process in that what we require as musicians from our computer, we require audio streaming off hard drives, audio playback. We require the CPU to process that audio as it's coming through with effects and to change it and to do all sorts of strange things with it using perhaps reverb impulses and other difficult computations that it's doing. At the same time, we want it to, in real time, generate sound from a note that we press on a keyboard or from a note in a DAW. And to do that immediately with no lag, while at the same time applying different parameters. while at the same time recording instruments streaming in through its various ports onto its hard drive and into its memory, while triggering samples loaded up into memory and instruments that are streaming from its active memory and also from the disk. At the same time, we want all of that, all of it, stuffed out of a single port through a little box and into our speakers, completely and perfectly glitch-free. Now, you know, browsing the internet, watching Netflix, doing a bit of email, none of those things come close. Gaming, perhaps, is quite stressful, mainly on the graphics, but it doesn't have anywhere near the amount of input and output information going through it as a DAW does, as making music does. So all I'm essentially trying to say is that we ask a lot of a computer when we want it to become the center of our studio. And to do that properly, to do that well, there are desktop solutions and desktop computers with big fat processors that are always on and always available to power, and those are much better designed for it. A mobile platform, like the Surface, like a lot of different laptops, are designed for other things, and really they're not thinking of us when these things are put together. Doesn't mean that we can't use them. I'm going to hopefully demonstrate that we can use them. We just have to do a little bit of working around, and we have to adjust our expectations as to what is actually possible on a platform like that, and balance that up with the convenience, the gorgeousness, and the interesting creative user interface and experience. So is that clear? Do you get the hang of that? Do you understand what I'm talking about? Good. Right. It's enough talking about that then, although it will keep coming up. It always comes up because it's something that people like to misunderstand regularly. So I've got my little setup. Obviously I have tested this before I've done this video, and I know kind of what's going to happen. But let me show you what happens with an out-of-the-box, untweaked Surface Pro 7. Now, I should also stress that I haven't done any testing beyond this point, because once I've tweaked it, it's difficult to untweak it in order to demonstrate the difference between the two things. So we're at the beginning of this. So this video may well turn into a video of everything, or it may well just be part of something, and then I'll have to go off and do some more testing and do something else. I don't know yet. So that's where we are at the beginning of this. But what I can show you is what currently happens if you were to buy a Surface now, take it home, plug in your audio interface and your MIDI keyboard. That's the experience I'm trying to show you. So let's start with something like Reactor. Reactor for Native Instruments is a brilliant thing. You can run the blocks. You've got a whole modular thing there. You can get the pen involved and your finger to connect all these things up. Or at least you could if it worked. Sadly, Reactor doesn't launch at the moment, or at least it crashes on launch or something like that. It just doesn't work. There's no explanation. Nobody knows. Posted a few posts on the Native Instruments forum, and hopefully support will get back to us soon. But currently, as it stands, Reactor 6, for no reason that we can find, does not function. So there you go. Let's try something simple. How about a piano from Arturia? Let me check the audio MIDI settings, what I'm going to need to do every single time because I have two systems going on. I need to make sure I'm coming out of the right one. So ASIO, complete audio ASIO driver, 128 samples, which is relatively low, but the complete audio 6 is running in safe mode, which means the latency is around about 5 milliseconds, which is kind of what you're after. Ideally, you know, it can back off a little bit, and we'll see. Then there may be some balancing required. But at the moment, I'm going to go for it. 128 samples. Let's see how that fares. Did you hear that? There again. Did you hear that? Yeah, okay, there's a click. There's a click in the audio. Not all the time. I mean, what's interesting, perhaps, is that the CPU meter, which is just down the bottom here, is only registering, you know, one or two little lines. So the system's handling it really well. There's just this occasional click. Let's flip-flop to something completely different. Let's try Reason 11. There, did you hear the click? Curious. There it was again. Doesn't seem to be that much related to polyphony or how many voices I'm running. Wasn't really running anything. DSP meter is still very much at the bottom, not the least bit concerned. Let's try Studio One. This time we'll try something like Parallels from Softube. There was immediate clicking there, wasn't there? More clicks. Okay, so that's software synths which are essentially generating their sounds. How about something like some strings in Contact, for instance? String ensemble. This is not a massive one, it's just the sort of essential strings in Contact. Click again. So why do I keep showing you different things and having them all click? Why don't I just tell you what's going on? Well, because I want you to see. I want you to see what's happening. I want you to understand that there seems to be a problem here and how do we solve it, and that it's not specific to a particular plugin or piece of software, because that's the first question I get if I show you Cubase not quite working. Someone will go, yeah, what about Pro Tools? What about Studio One? What about Reaper? Yeah, I know. So I want to show you a broad range of things so that you can see it's not just one thing. And this is a problem inherent with the system, not with just a particular piece of software. Yeah. So what am I showing you so far? That currently using the Complete Audio 6, is it the Complete Audio 6's fault? I don't believe so. I've tried this on numerous systems and it's completely fine. The drivers are good, all that sort of thing. But I will at some point change this for another audio interface and see if that's a factor. But what we should do is compare that with using the onboard sound, because that way we can perhaps see whether it's something to do with the USB connection. Yeah? So, I'm going to go into the bits and pieces of this, go to Wasapi, which is the Windows driver, changed it to the Realtek, which is that, the Realtek audio engine, which is that. It's running at a slightly higher latency, which is always going to be the case with onboard audio. And we'll try that again. So the light's no longer coming out of here. All of this is going through this particular box, which is an audio fuse. It's not connected as an audio interface. I'm just purely using it as a mixer at this point. But it's currently coming out of here, not out of here. In fact, I can turn that all the way down. No clicks. No clicks. Let's try. No clicks. Let's go back to Reason. Go for Reason has a different sort of audio engine. Doesn't like Wasapi or Windows Audio particularly. It uses an older direct sound driver, but we can still use that. Now that whacks the latency up massively, but we can also should be able to bring that down to something approaching something sensible. No, look at this, look. No, that's terrible. Doesn't really matter. No clicks. So I don't want direct sound, I want Windows audio. There we go, 480, let's go down 256. No clicks. Right, let's just swap back to the Complete Audio 6. There's a click. All right, so I'm not going crazy. It's there. So what can we discern from this? We can discern that something up with the USB interface. I don't believe it's the interface itself. I will prove that if I need to, but I'm going to go forward assuming that the actual interface is not an issue. It's to do with something about the resources and the USB port on the Surface itself. Can this be resolved is the next question. Who knows? Now, I hear from dozens and dozens and dozens of people who comment on my video about tweaking the Surface, Surface Pro 6, Surface Pro 17, Surface Pro 4, and so on back in time for all the times that I've done it. And I'm constantly getting comments about, oh wow, that's really sorted me out, our system was really glitching and now it's great, and now it's great. So, probably just through the tweaking of the system, we should be able to get a better playback. I don't actually know whether that's going to work, but it's got to be worth trying, hasn't it? So that's going to be my first port of call. And if this video can just be that, if I can just do those tweaks and then have it run great, that will be enough, I think, for this video. But there are lots of other things that we can look at. For instance, you notice the noise out of the headphone socket? Yeah, well, that's just one of those things of using just a headphone socket on a device like this. With something like an audio interface like this, you're going to get a much better, broader, wider quality of sound. Much less noise. The other thing was the latency, the amount of lag when using the onboard drivers, because it's there. You know, I've measured it in previous videos, I can probably measure it again, but there's always going to be a feelable latency when using the onboard sound, unless the software itself has been written very well, and particularly for the Windows drivers. However, there's a useful little app called ASIO for All, which should help us reduce the latency, but I'm going to save that for another video. And if you're sitting there thinking, what is this all about? Why doesn't it just work? I don't know, mate, I've been doing this for 20 years. You've always had to fight to get things to work. It's just the way of things. Because this Surface is not designed for you. It's not designed for this. Click. See, it's designed for browsing the internet and playing games and having fun. Not designed for this. So we have to work within the parameters that we've got and within the specification that we have and see how that goes. Oh, the specification. This is the i5 8GB version. I mean, at the moment, it's irrelevant for the test that we're running and what we're trying to find out, but the version that I have, because people again will ask, it is an Ice Lake Intel Core i5 1035G4 CPU. Got all of that? Well, I don't know. It says it's running at 1.1 gigahertz, which is a bit of a shame. There are 4 cores, I believe, and it says its core speed at the moment is about 3.2 to 3.6. And it has hyper-threading, so there's 8 threads in total. So it's a very capable quad-core machine. Cool, it should work fine then, shouldn't it? So this begs the question, what are the tweaks? What are the tweaks? Well, there's only really a couple these days that are of any importance, and they're mostly to do with the power. So let's have a look. So the old style control panel, of course, is nowhere to be found these days. You have to go to Start and type Control Panel, and there it is. If you go to Small Icons, and we can have a quick search through here, I mean, there used to be lots of stuff that you could do, but really all we're looking for is the power options, and there's probably a quicker way to get to it. But that's the way I always have. So we look in here and it says choose or customize a power plan. Oh, okay. Change power plan settings. That's not what we want. We want to change the power plan itself. Now, the only power plan option we get is for a balanced one. That's it. Because Microsoft don't want you messing with the Surface power plan because it's a carefully balanced, fanless, passively cooled system. If you start messing around with the power, it's not going to necessarily maintain its thermal profile. And that could do it, or potentially some damage, or it might just start making it shut down quicker than it needs to. So Microsoft don't like you messing with this. But if we're going to make music on this machine, we're going to need to mess with it. The reasons are quite simple. Many reasons, I'm sure, but the simplest one is that for all of the things I mentioned earlier about real-time audio performance, we need the processor to be on all the time. This sort of laptop, all sorts of laptops, are designed to reduce power. They're always trying to turn the CPU off because it wants to save battery life. It wants you to be able to go out and have your coffee and to not have to worry about you running out of juice. We're not interested in that. Got enough coffee, thanks. I just want to make music and therefore I need power. I need that CPU on all the time. Because otherwise you're going to play something and the CPU goes, okay, great, I can play that. And then you step away to write some notes in or to do something else. And the CPU goes, oh, right, and it'll shut itself down. And you go back to play and it goes, oh my goodness, and can't gather itself together enough to return to where it was previously, quick enough in order for you to do it. So you could translate that to being perhaps playing back a project which has a quieter bit in it with less instruments going, and the CPU starts to come down, and then a loud bit comes in and it can't cope with what's going on. That is a problem. We need the CPU to be awake, to be alive, to be active the entire time. That will be at the expense of the battery, and that's all right as far as I'm concerned, because I've got it plugged in. That's where my focus is. Doing something without having it plugged in, that's a whole other kettle of fish. But at the moment, that's where we are. So what can we do in this situation? Well, we can create a power plan. And it gives us absolutely nothing. We can choose with our custom power plan to turn the display on or off or put the computer to sleep. That's it. So when I do that, that's all we get. Now, there's a few advanced settings, but again, they don't really do anything other than change how the battery reacts to critical alarms, how the power button reacts to things, and how it sleeps. None of those things are useful to us. In fact, really, we want to turn all those things off. So to start with, the first tweak we need to do, which is to put it into high performance mode, just simply isn't available to us. And that's a bummer. Now, in order to get those settings back, previously, we've had to do a little bit of jiggery-pokery in the registry, which I might well have to do in a minute. But I found a new mode that I didn't even know existed on Windows, which is ultimate performance. I've never seen it before in my life, but I saw a way to enable it using a bit of a command line thing. So that's got to be worth checking out. Bookmarked it here somewhere. So according to TweakHound here, it says ultimate performance is a new policy that builds on the current high performance policy, and it goes a step further to eliminate micro latencies associated with fine-grained power management techniques. Sounds awesome. Let's have that. So to do it, I will post it in the description below, but there's a whole bunch of numbers and things you need to do in order to get this to work. So you run this from a command prompt, so you can right click on the start thing and go PowerShell admin, like so, copy and paste it in, hit enter. There you go, Power Scheme, Ultimate Performance. I wonder if that's worked. Let's have a look. So now if we go back to our power settings here, probably need to come out of it and then go back into it again. If I create a power plan, okay, nothing changed. It's going to be trickier than that then, isn't it? It's going to be trickier. Okay, in that case we're going to have to go in and do some registry jiggery-pokery. So if you click on start and type regedit, we're now into registry editing. Now this can be a scary place, don't be scared. I'm going to show you what to do. We press F3 and search for CS enabled. Now, CS enabled will come up in the search in a couple of different places. The first one we don't want. We'll know it when we see it. CS enabled refers to something called connected standby, which is all of the internal power bits and pieces of the platform. And while that's enabled, Windows prevents us from accessing any of the power profiles and the power settings. And we need to get to them. We really do need to get to them. And what I really hope at this point is that once we've done this and it all just works, that we can go, hooray! Because if I do all of this and then it doesn't work, I'll feel a bit stupid. Anyway, so it's not this one. We need to find the CS enabled one which refers to the power settings. So we hit F3 again. Now, of course, we could just browse straight to the correct key, but I can't remember what that is, so I thought it'd be more interesting to find it this way. Now here we are. So the key that you're after is HKey local machine /system/control set 001/control/power. All right. In there you've got CS enabled and it's set to 1. We want to set that to 0. It took me about 7 presses to get here, but you can see what that looks like, I hope. And all we do is double tap it, press 0. Press OK. Then we can close it. Then it's always worth rebooting, I think, at this point. So hopefully this is going to allow us a bit of access to the power profile so we can set a couple of settings which could release some of the power which is troubling the USB port. So if we right click and go to power options, this brings up the more modern version. And on this, what we want to go to is related settings, which says additional power settings, and this brings up, oh look, my custom plan. My custom plan is still there. So something has changed. We now have this show additional plans bit. Now I wonder what we're going to find. We find ultimate performance. Oh my goodness, this is so exciting. I wonder if that's going to do it. I don't know. So doing that change in the registry that we did has now enabled and revealed these additional plans, and that bit of jiggery pokery in the command line that I did has created this ultimate performance option. I've clicked it, the screen's already gone brighter, which actually is not very good for the cameras, but I'm going with it. So I wonder what happens when we look at this. So first of all, it no longer has a sleep mode, which is good. I'm very much anti-sleep when it comes to computers. If you want to turn your computer off, turn your computer off. If you're not using it anymore and want to come back to it in a few moments, then just leave it on. Sleeping has always done bad things, particularly to music software, but it can do bad things to whatever it is you're working on, because it closes it all down quite nicely and then it doesn't always open it up as well as we think. Sometimes it does. That might work for you, that's fine, but not for me. If I'm not using a machine, I can turn it off. If I'd like to continue using it, I'm going to leave it on. And the planet be damned, as far as the ecological ramifications of that. So, okay, back to what we're doing. So in this power plan, I'm going to, if I'm on battery, I don't care about batteries. I'm using it plugged in. So I'm going to put that down to never. I don't want it to turn off the display because I don't want it to think about turning it off the display. It's not that I object to that, but I do anyway, is that I don't want the computer thinking about that because that's using up resources it doesn't need to be using. We'll go back into it after just saving that bit and going to change advanced power settings. Now, hopefully, the other thing that happens when we do the CS enabled bit is that it reveals a whole load of possibilities in here. That's what we need. We need these. This is what we're after. But I'm fascinated to know what ultimate performance is actually doing because I've never looked into this before. Because I usually use high performance and then edit things in here to make changes to that because I never knew this ultimate thing existed. Exciting, so exciting. So what are we interested in here? Well, normally we want the hard disk to be set to never. Turn off, never. Don't ever turn off the hard disk. That's stupid. Don't do it. It's already set to that. So I'm going to go down to USB settings. The USB selective suspend setting, I want this to be disabled. The reason being is that I don't want the USB ports to shut themselves down. I want them to be always on. I don't want them to be thinking about shutting down. I want them to be always on, always. So I've set that to disabled. The other thing we've got down here is processor power management, minimum and maximum processor state. Now this can be a cause of difficulty and issues, but it also can be the savior of a system, because the processor within the Surface Pro 7 is a tricky one. It's a difficult one. It's got a low base clock, very high turbo rate, and a propensity to want to shut itself down at every opportunity. That's a tough call. That's a tough cookie to crack, that one. Whereas what we want is it on all the time. Now there's a mistaken belief that if you put the CPU on to be on 100% all the time, that it will be 100% occupied and therefore very, very, very hot. No. All you're doing is setting its speed rate, its clock rate, so that that stays constant. That doesn't speed up, doesn't slow down. Sure, that will generate more heat than it not doing that, but the heat comes when a CPU is in use, not when it's idle. So you can have it set to 100%, and that's not going to reduce its life or do anything like that or blow up your system. It's just sitting there, moving around at idle at a nice high speed, so that when it starts having to do stuff, it's there and it's ready to work immediately. So on battery, it's set to 5%. I don't care about that. Again, plugged in 100%. That's what I would have set it to. And the maximum state is 100%. Again, that's what I would have set it to. From what I can see, the ultimate performance power plan has done all of the tweaking that I would normally do. So I think this would be a good point just to see whether we're still getting clicks. So let's go back to our piano, shall we? Seems fine. Now I've noticed that the CPU meter is slightly higher, which is interesting, but that's just a little observation. I'm not trying to prove anything at this point. Let's go back to something else which made clicking, like the Reason project that we used. Let's try that. I'm not hearing any. You may have heard one. I don't know. I'm not. That seemed on the whole to be better behaved. Let's have a look at Studio One again. Seems fine. Really does seem fine. Okay, back to Contact. No clicks. No clicks. God darn it. No clicks. Right, well, let's try a couple of other bits and pieces, because this is sounding incredibly positive. Let's try Bitwig. Try just running a demo song to see whether that gives us any trouble. Yeah, okay. Okay, what was interesting there was that the DSP, the graph here, and CPU meter filled up, which is why we got those glitches. I mean, that's That's correct behavior. That's what we expect. Once you've overloaded the processor, you'll get glitches. What we were getting before was glitches with hardly anything going on the processor at all. And so Bitwig in this instance is showing us something a little bit different. Let's try it again. To see the peak in the DSP meter is exactly corresponded to the glitch that we got. Weren't getting that before. Not that we showed it in Bitwig, but in other bits of software there was no peaking of the CPU meter. And so that's expected behavior. And all that's telling me at the moment is that what's actually going on with the processor is going to need some further investigation, which we can do in another video. For this, I'm just keeping it to getting successful playback over USB, which is what I'm after, what I'm trying to achieve in this particular one. Let's try it with Ableton Live. Now, there are some little glitches there too, but that's only happening when we're reaching 50% on the CPU meter, which is interesting. As again, I say, CPU needs to be looked at in a bit more detail, which I will do, but that requires a bit more work. So we're just sticking with this for the moment. But that's interesting. It can definitely work. There just seems to be a point at which something bad is going to happen. Let's try Cubase. So that all seems pretty steady to me. Let's try something like Massive X. Now, I have to say, Massive X is behaving itself extraordinarily well. Extraordinarily well. The CPU meter in complete control that I'm running here is hardly glimmering, and Massive X is a pretty hunky, chunky synthesizer. And it's hardly blinking. That's really good. It's really good. So let's get back on track for a second and work out exactly where we are. So we started off in a situation where the onboard audio seemed to work all right. A little bit of latency, a little bit of noise perhaps, but generally speaking, no clicks or pops, it just played back stuff pretty well. So on the whole, out of the box, just using the onboard audio, it's all right. It's okay. The latency is going to be too much for some people. Recording in obviously is impossible because there is no line input, there's just built-in microphones, and that's not really conducive to capturing a fantastic vocal performance. So when we then look at USB, we found that initially it was a bit glitchy. It was a bit glitchy. It would pop, it would click. Nothing, so it seemed, to do with the CPU as such. It was just a bit glitchy. So then I did some magic with Ultimate Performance mode, and that seems to have calmed it down so that now we're getting proper glitch-free performance with the USB audio interface. It's not perfect. We had some glitching in Bitwig as the CPU started to fill up, and also in Ableton Live. And that needs further investigation, because what the processor actually is doing at this moment, I don't know. We haven't looked into it that deeply. And so it could be that the processor is either not going anywhere near as high as it could, or it's staying at a low level, or it's jumping about. I don't know. Those things I'll be checking into next, I imagine. But suffice to say that with this little tweak, and there's a lot of talking in this overly long video, I appreciate that. I just want to give out as much information as I can so that you can have the best chance of understanding what's going on with this fella. Yeah, you can always skip through, I don't mind. But hopefully what I've shown you in this video is that with a little tweak, a vital tweak by the looks of things, and an easier one to what we've seen previously, those little glitchy problems with USB audio could be, should be, and would be sorted out. I also suspect that if you've used my previous guide on the previous Surface, it would also sort it out, because essentially I'm doing the same thing, but I'm creating a high performance profile within the power plan, and using the CS enabled switch again to reveal those parameters, which I then change manually. With Ultimate Performance, it seems to do all that all by itself, which is an excellent thing to learn. And I'm probably going to put that in just a little tiny video all by itself. But for now, it's a secret between you and me, right? That we know how to sort this out. So what really needs to be looked at next is the behavior of that processor. So there you go. I hope that was useful. I've shown that the Surface Pro 7 can indeed work with USB audio interfaces. It just needs that power profile tweak. And then that should be your starting point. There are other things going on with the processor, which I will look into next, in the next video. But I think this has been a good start, a positive start. I'm getting some very positive vibes off the Surface Pro 7, and so I think this hopefully should just get better and better. But as it is now, apply that tweak, install your USB audio interface, and you should be all right for the most part. And let's see if we can get more performance out of it down the road. And in the meantime, go make some tunes.